Imagine crossing a busy street and trying to judge if a car will hit you. At sea, Rule 7 of the COLREGS is your guide for making that judgment, except the stakes are much higher. This rule is all about figuring out if you might collide with another vessel, not just if you definitely will. It's the bridge between keeping a lookout, going at a safe speed, and knowing when to take action. In this video, we'll break down Rule 7 in simple Gen Z language, explain the famous CBDR principle, and highlight common mistakes students make. Let's dive in and see why this rule is the backbone of collision avoidance at sea. Rule 7 is the assessment phase in collision avoidance. After gathering information, lookout, and speed, you now need to analyze it. The key question isn't, are we going to collide, but could we possibly collide? If there's any doubt, you must assume risk exists and act accordingly. This proactive mindset is crucial because ships are slow to stop or turn, and by the time you're sure of a collision, it's often too late. Rule 7 forces mariners to be cautious and systematic, making it a vital part of safe navigation. Let's look at the official text of Rule 7. It has 4 main points. A, use all available means to determine if risk exists. B, proper use of radar. C, don't make assumptions based on scanty information. And D, consideration for determining risk, especially the compass bearing of approaching vessels. Each section is critical for understanding how to assess collision risk. We'll break down each part so you know exactly what's expected and how to apply it in real-world situations. Section tells you to use every tool and method available to determine if there's a risk of collision. This includes your eyes, binoculars, compass bearings, radar, ARPA, AIS, VHF radio, and even sound signals and fog. The idea is to gather as much information as possible and analyze it systematically. Just glancing at another vessel isn't enough. You need to track its movement over time and actively determine if risk exists. This section emphasizes continuous methodical observation, not just a one-time check. Rule 7 requires you to adapt your assessment methods to the prevailing circumstances. In clear weather, visual bearings might be enough, but in fog or congested waters, you'll rely more on radar and sound signals. The key is to match your approach to the risk level. Don't use the same technique for every situation. This flexibility ensures you're always using the best tools for the job, keeping you and your vessel safe no matter the condition. One of the most important parts of Rule 7 is the instruction to assume risk if there's any doubt. If you're not 100% sure there's no risk, you must act as if there is. This conservative approach is vital because at sea, uncertainty is common, distances are deceptive, and ships react slowly. By assuming risk early, you give yourself the time and space needed to avoid a collision. It's the ultimate better safe than sorry rule, and it can save lives. Rule 7 demands more than a quick glance. You need to observe and track other vessels systematically over time. This means taking compass bearings, plotting positions, and using radar or ARPA to monitor movement. Continuous assessment is key. Don't stop monitoring until the risk is clearly gone. This habit of systematic observation is what separates safe mariners from those who end up in trouble. If your vessel has radar, Rule 7b says you must use it properly. This means setting the right range, tuning it correctly, and actively monitoring it, not just turning it on and forgetting about it. Use long-range scanning for early warning and switch to shorter ranges as vessels get closer. Radar plotting or ARPA should be used to track targets and calculate CPA, closest point of approach, and TCPA, time to CPA. Proper radar use gives you the data you need to make informed decisions. Radar plotting can be done manually or with ARPA. Manual plotting involves recording bearing and range at regular intervals and analyzing the trend. ARPA automates this process, calculating CPA and TCPA for you. However, you still need to understand the principles behind both methods. Systematic tracking is essential. Casual observation isn't enough. Always verify ARPA results with occasional manual checks, especially if the situation is complex or the equipment is acting up. Rule 7c warns against making decisions based on scanty information. This means you shouldn't jump to conclusions after just 1 or 2 observations, especially with radar. Insufficient data can be misleading, bearing changes might be due to measurement error, and radar targets can be unreliable at long range or in clutter. Always gather enough observations over time before deciding there's no risk. This cautious approach prevents costly mistakes. Radar can give a false sense of security if you rely on too little data. For example, seeing a target on radar once or twice might make you think there's no risk, but you could be missing a developing situation. The rule singles out radar because it looks so clear and confident, but it's only as good as the data you collect. Always take at least 3 observations over a sufficient period, and keep monitoring until the vessel is safely passed. Section D introduces the heart of collision risk assessment. The CBDR principle, constant bearing, decreasing range. If the compass bearing of an approaching vessel doesn't appreciably change while the distance decreases, you're on a collision course. This is a mathematical certainty, not a guess. Systematic bearing checks over time reveal whether you're at risk, and this principle is the foundation of collision avoidance at sea. Check for CBDR. You can use several methods. Take compass bearings at intervals, use a fixed point on your vessel for visual alignment, or plot positions on radar. If the bearing stays roughly the same and the vessel gets closer, you're on a collision course. ARPA can automate this, but you should always understand the manual process. Remember, small fluctuations in bearing 1-3 degrees are normal. What matters is if there's no significant change over time. Rule says risk exists if the bearing doesn't appreciably change. But what counts as appreciable? A change of 1-2 degrees over 12 minutes isn't significant. It could be error or minor adjustments. A change of 10-15 degrees is appreciable and usually means you'll pass clear. If you're unsure, always assume risk exists. This conservative approach is especially important in gray areas where the bearing change is small but not zero. Rule 7d also warns that risk can exist even when the bearing is changing, especially when approaching very large vessels, tows, or at close range. Large ships and tows have significant length or width, so even a changing bearing might not guarantee safety. At close range, small bearing changes might not provide enough clearance. Always add a safety margin and treat these situations with extra caution. Let's apply Rule 7 to a real-world scenario. You're in open ocean with clear weather and detect a single vessel on radar. You take 3 bearings over time and they stay constant while the range decreases. This is classic CBDR. Risk of collision exists. Rule 7 requires you to keep tracking the vessel, and if risk remains, take action as per Rule 8. The key is continuous, systematic observation until the risk is gone. Busy waters, you might have several vessels to track. Rule 7 says you must assess each target individually, prioritizing those with the smallest CPA or unclear movement. ARPA can help track multiple targets, but with manual plotting, focus on the most dangerous ones first. Trying to track too many at once can lead to mistakes. Better to track a few well than all poorly. Fog visual observation is limited, so you rely heavily on radar and sound signals. Rule 7 assessment becomes even more critical. Risk is higher, and radar-only information can be less certain. Systematic radar plotting at short intervals is essential, and you must reduce speed and sound fog signals as required. In restricted visibility, always be extra conservative and follow Rule 19 for specific conduct. Sometimes your data is inconsistent, bearings fluctuate slightly, and you're unsure if the change is real or just measurement error. Rule 7 is clear: if there's any doubt, you must assume risk exists. Continue plotting, prepare to take action, and only relax when you have clear evidence that risk is gone. Acting early is always safer than waiting for certainty. Passing through a fleet of fishing vessels is challenging. Their movements are unpredictable, and those engaged in fishing have special status under the rules. You must assess each vessel for collision risk, reduce speed, and give them a wide berth. Visual observation is crucial, as fishing gear might extend far from the vessel. Communication via VHF can help clarify intentions and avoid misunderstandings. Failing to follow Rule 7 can have serious legal consequences. If a collision occurs and it's found you didn't systematically assess risk, courts may presume you're at fault. This can lead to criminal charges, civil liability, and even loss of your license. Many major maritime accidents have been traced back to failures under Rule 7. Officers who made assumptions, didn't plot radar contacts, or stopped monitoring too soon. Investigation reports often show a familiar pattern. A target is detected, only 1 or 2 observations are made, assumptions are made based on scanty data, monitoring stops, and a close-quarters situation develops. By the time the officer notices again, it's too late to avoid collision. All because Rule 7's requirements for systematic, continuous assessment weren't followed. To avoid mistakes, build the habit of systematic assessment. Every time you detect a vessel, start tracking it immediately. Set a timer for regular intervals, record bearings and ranges, and keep monitoring until the vessel is safely passed. This habit ensures you never miss a developing risk and always have the data you need to make safe decisions. Never make a risk assessment based on fewer than 3 observations, unless immediate danger requires instant action. 3 plots give you a reliable trend and help rule out errors or temporary fluctuations. This simple rule can prevent many common mistakes and is a cornerstone of safe navigation. Don't rely on memory, record every observation. Note the time, bearing, range, calculated CPA, TCPA, your assessment, and any actions taken. This not only helps you keep track but also creates a legal record if something goes wrong. Writing things down ensures nothing is forgotten and your assessments are always based on solid data. It's important to master both manual plotting and electronic systems like ARPA. ARPA is fast and accurate, but it can fail or be fooled by clutter. Manual plotting is slower but reliable and helps you understand the underlying principles. Use both methods, verify ARPA with manual checks, and always know what your equipment is telling you. Burn this mantra into your brain: if there is any doubt, such risk shall be deemed to exist. Uncertain about bearing change, data inconsistent, not sure if it's a tow, always assume risk and act accordingly. This mindset will keep you safe and help you avoid costly mistakes. If you're unsure about another vessel's intentions or status, use VHF radio to clarify. Ask about their course, speed, or if they're towing. Clear communication can prevent misunderstandings and help you make better decisions. It's always better to sound cautious than to risk a collision. Radar plotting is a skill that fades if you don't practice. Make it a habit to plot vessels on every watch, even when there's no apparent risk. This keeps your skills sharp, improves your speed and accuracy, and ensures you're always ready to assess risk properly when it matters most. ARPA is a powerful tool, but it's not perfect. It needs time to acquire and track targets, can lose tracks if a vessel changes course, and might not detect small targets. Always verify ARPA results with visual or manual checks and never blindly trust the system. Understanding ARPA's limitations is key to safe navigation. Risk assessment under Rule 7 isn't a one-time check, it's a continuous process. From the moment you detect another vessel until you're safely passed, you must keep monitoring and reassessing. Situations can change quickly, vessels alter course, weather shifts, or new information emerges. Vigilance and discipline are your best tools for staying safe. Maritime navigation is about physics and math, not intuition. Your gut feeling about collision risk is often wrong. Systematic observation and analysis are what keep you safe. Take bearings, plot positions, calculate CPA, and trust the data. The CBDR principle is mathematical certainty. If bearing is constant and range is decreasing, you will collide unless someone changes course or speed. The process is cyclical. Detect a vessel lookout, assess risk. Rule 7, take action if needed. Rule 8, monitor the effectiveness and repeat as necessary. Never stop assessing even if you think the risk is gone. This cycle ensures you're always prepared for changes and can react before it's too late. Rule 7 connects to other COLREGS rules. Rule 5, lookout provides the data. Rule 7 analyzes it, and Rule 8 tells you what action to take. Rules 11-18 only apply once Rule 7 shows risk exists. You can't skip the assessment phase. Systematic progression is mandatory for safe navigation. Even if you're the stand-on vessel, you must keep assessing risk and be ready to act if the giveaway vessel doesn't. Rule 7 is about vigilance, discipline, and systematic assessment. It's not glamorous, but it's absolutely critical to safe navigation. Trust the math, not your gut. Always use all available means, never make assumptions on scanty information, and keep assessing risk until you're safely passed. That's how you avoid collisions, protect your career, and save lives at sea.